Hey everybody, hope you're all doing alright out there. So, recently I saw a video to do with mountain biking and something was said in that video that really surprised me that I've never heard it said amongst motorcycling, and it's to do with what to do with your old helmets. But I realised that if I'm going to talk about old helmets, I should probably explain why you want to do this and why you want to avoid anyone ever using one again, so we can talk about second-hand helmets first and explain why you do not want to get a second-hand motorcycle helmet. I have one of my old helmets here. I have all my old ones up there. I wouldn't dare use them. They're way too old, and I would never sell these or give these to anyone in a condition that they could be used. So, first things first, is it okay to buy a second-hand helmet? No. Never, ever. I don't care what you say. No. No, it's not. Your life is worth more than saving 30, 40 quid. Seriously, no. There is good reasons for this too, and I'll explain. When it comes to motorcycle helmets, there's a few things that you need to consider. They are disposable, they have a shelf life. So if this sits on a shelf for 10 years and is never used, bin. So it doesn't matter if you buy a second-hand helmet which was never used, if it's sat in someone's cupboard for 4 years, bin. They have to be thrown, it's there to protect your life. People do this with helmets, they'll cheap out on it, and I'm like, would you cheap out on a parachute? I bet you wouldn't, but you do with a helmet because you don't think of it in the same way. All helmets will have a production date on them somewhere, and you shouldn't use the helmet after, this is argued, 3 to 5 years of the manufacturing date, should we say. I'm going to leave it there. Look at your individual helmet manufacturer's recommended length of time, because as I say, on a super cheap helmet, maybe you wouldn't want to use it for more than a couple of years. More expensive helmets, you might use it a couple more years, but if that's a good idea or not is another thing. The reason for this is because materials degrade. So like the shell will degrade, the fiberglass in that can become, and the resins can break down and it can become more brittle. The inside lining is another thing, and I'm not talking about this inside lining. This is normally easier to see on some helmets because the EPS, the polystyrene lining, is normally white. This has been painted black. So it's a little harder to see, and all those marks you see on the back there are caused by cables being stored in the back. They haven't actually done anything really to the EPS, they've just taken the colouring off, so just so you know, but that's because I'm a vlogger. And yeah, it's a risk having wires in the back of your helmet. They shouldn't be there, but they're so thin that, that's a risk I'm willing to take. So that stuff that looks like polystyrene is called EPS, and it's there to help protect your head from impacts from a lot of force. And this goes into why you shouldn't use second-hand helmets. When you buy a motorcycle helmet, fitment is very important. It needs to be a little bit tight to start with. Not with pressure points, because those are never going to really go away, but an overall tightness is okay, because your head is going to imprint into that EPS, so you get a much closer fit to your head. This means when your head hits the floor, you have as much surface area of that EPS to spread out the load of the impact. So instead of a correctly fitted helmet where your head and the helmet are as one, so you'll have some impact taken away by the breaking of the shell, the squishing the EPS, everything, and it also sends shockwaves around the outside of the helmet to try and get away from your head, to my understanding. There's a lot of science into this. It's much more important to have a full contact to get as much absorption over the largest area you possibly can have. If you have an ill-fitting helmet, the helmet hits the floor, then you hit the helmet, and it can do pretty much as much damage. Okay, it's a little softer than hitting your head on concrete, but it's not doing the job it was designed to do. And that's why fitment is so important. And also, as I said, it imprints on your head. So if you bought a helmet from someone who has a rounder head than you in a different size, when it comes to having a crash, it's not going to fit you right. And it never really can, because they might have plus points where you have low points, and you might have high points where they have low points in the shape of your heads. Another thing about that EPS is that it also degrades as well as the shell of the helmet. Say the shell gets destroyed by UV, the resins get destroyed by time, etc., etc. This stuff on the inside will harden up. And that's one of the things. As I say, if you've got a helmet which has formed to your head but it's gone hard, when you hit the floor, it's not going to absorb that impact for you as much as it should. And that's one of the reasons why they say don't use these helmets for more than a few years. There are ways to check how the EPS is, but if a helmet's out of date, don't use it, even if the EPS feels okay. So the way I was told to do this was to put your fingers on the inside brow ridge of the EPS and give it a little squeeze and see if it feels rock hard. Older helmets will feel a lot harder than new ones. New ones you should leave a little dent behind. I can't remember if they said that you should, if that dent should go away over time or not. So I won't say that, and I say don't use this as a testing method, because I was told that by someone who knew what they were talking about, but I've not been able to find a huge amount of references to that. So you should buy your helmet new, wear your helmet new, and then get rid of it after the allotted time that the manufacturer suggests for that brand. And then, what do you do with it? And this is where this video I saw the other day really made me think. It's from Burn Peak, which is a mountain biking channel. I don't even do mountain biking, but it's very interesting, and I watch a few of their videos. And he said about how it's a good idea to just destroy your old cycling helmet, and people will do this. So if anyone finds it in the garbage, in the trash, in the bin, that it's not going to be a condition that they think, oh, I could use that, that looks perfectly good. Because a crashed helmet, that's another thing. If you crash in your helmet, gone. It's a one-time deal. If you drop your helmet on the ground from, shoulder height or even waist height, you have to replace it. If it's a super expensive helmet, then you can send it off to places that can do some scans and stuff and find out if it's okay. But if it's a cheap helmet, it's bin. This is why you don't put your helmet in tricky places, like on your seat of your bike and stuff like that. You see newbies do it all the time. They put the helmet on the seat of the bike, sorting the gear and stuff out. Wind blows, it falls off, hits the floor. They pick it up, think whatever, and carry on. That helmet's now no good. And what can happen if you drop it just once is you could put a micro fracture through the side of the helmet. You now need that helmet to protect you in an emergency, in a very bad crash, and the outer shell of the helmet isn't going to send those forces around it. It's just going to explode and shatter, and you're not going to get nearly as much of the protection that you should have got. The same thing can happen with sun-damaged helmets. True story, I once had a comment from a guy who said he'd been using the same helmet for 30-something years, and he saw no reason there was a problem with that. And I looked at it, and I'm just like, because he had a picture somewhere, and I'm just like, it's going to shatter. It's going to shatter like glass the second it touches the floor. I tried to say to him, like, seriously, maybe do a bit of research as to why that's not a great idea and why they put time limits on helmets. Besides the fact that old helmets weren't nearly as good as modern helmets, 30 years old, and he thinks it's fine. If your helmet is more than 5 years old, I'm sorry to tell you this, it is probably not going to do its job as well as it should have in a crash, if you have one. It's just the reality of it. I know, you have this helmet, you love the thing, you pay several £100s for it, you use it for 4 years, and you're like, well, it still looks fine, I'll just keep using it. It's your life. As with all things, if you know the risks and you choose to continue doing that, that's all on you, because the only people it affects is you and your family and anyone around you. But sorry, anyway, back to my point. Burn Peak was saying about with mountain biking helmets that when you're done with it, you should destroy it in a sense that no one will try and use it again. And I've never heard anyone suggest that for motorcycle helmets, and it's just as relevant. Maybe more so, because these can look like they're okay 10 years on, but if someone actually tried to use it, it might not do its job. So here's the question. If you're not keeping it on a shelf, or something like I am, and you need to throw your helmet away, how do you do that? And do you think that we should start recommending to bikers that when you do throw your helmet away, you destroy it? And what I mean by that is, if you've got to just, drop it on the ground loads to just smash the outside of it up so it looks like no one's going to use it, or even cut it in half with a saw or something, I don't know. There's got to be, I can think of 1,000 ways to destroy a motorcycle helmet, and no, I'm not about to make that video because I like keeping these as mementos, but this is an ornament and nothing more. And that was kind of the point I was trying to get to here. We should be destroying our old motorcycle helmets to alleviate the risk that if anyone finds them in the rubbish, that they won't try and use them. Or, if someone sees one in a bin and goes, oh, that's all right, and tries to sell it on eBay. These things should not happen, and you can avoid all of them happening by destroying the helmet rather than just chucking it in the bin. You can now see why, if I just made a video saying that, we would have had all the discussion about second-hand helmets, what you should and shouldn't do and all that sort of stuff. As I say, the advice I've given in this video is what has been given to me and what I go by, but the rule is simple. You buy a helmet new, you use it for the allotted amount of time the manufacturer is okay with, and then you bin it, and at that point, I think destroying it would be a good idea if you're not going to just put it up on a shelf. But just make sure there is no chance of that thing ever going back into use by anyone. I know a lot of people will say, I think it's a lot about, manufacturers wanting you to just buy a new helmet every few years in this. And I can understand that, but do you want to take that risk? I know a lot of you are like, screw the companies, but when it comes to actually dying and maybe having brain damage, maybe I won't call their bluff on this one. that's the rules that I go by. Listen to your manufacturers. If there's any more information you have on ways you do things, or if you do destroy your helmets for this sort of reason, you have any stories or anecdotes related to second-hand helmets, then comments below, please do. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. It will definitely help it get into the algorithm, and more of my subscribers might see it. Yes, my subscribers, not just everyday people out there. I mean my subscribers. YouTube YouTube delivers videos to a small group of my subscribers, and if that small group of subscribers actually reacts to the video, comments on it, likes it, watches it, then it gets sent to more. If you want to help support this channel, you can do that through Patreon. There are many benefits to that, including getting to Discord and stuff. But otherwise, yeah, catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.